Oh boy. All these times I think that I'm done with a particular topic, and I always find something that always just seems to drag me right back into the mix. But as I said before, this is not going to be my normal routine anymore. I've pretty much done addressing issues like this. But this latest upload by somebody just kind of had me just reeling from so many different points. And the thing that I actually came to appreciate about this particular uploader and the thing that she posted up about how black men are just basically making stuff up out of their okole as far as they're claimed, or they're pointing out the fact that black women by and large gravitate toward thugs or thug type people. And now, granted, technically speaking, one of the points that she made was about the fact that you just can't call anybody who just happens to have a certain look about themselves, or have a certain attitude about themselves, or have a certain upbringing. We tend to categorize them simply as thugs simply because they were outside of the realm of just doing the right thing, if you will. So she would label things such as, well, if you blame somebody who had uh, an upbringing with a single parent, and they didn't have a father figure in the house, and they didn't get a good education, so they ran out in the streets and sold dope, that doesn't make them a thug. But as I was explaining to someone, I said, well, yeah, technically speaking, that's absolutely true. The term thug has undergone quite a bit of evolution over the centuries. The original term starting out as a as the name of the devotees of Kali in India. They were called Thuggee. And what the Thuggee would do was that they would actually go out into the streets and just randomly assault and murder people just to satisfy the bloodlusts of their goddess who demanded those sorts of blood sacrifices. That's where the term originated. But of course, over the decades and over the centuries, language is malleable, and so it evolves until we get to the point where today the terms thug is synonymous with typically inner city, and of course inner city, a catchphrase for black urban youth. And they tend to, even if they don't engage in harmful behavior where they have violent tendencies, there's still an air or a presentation, an aura that they present about themselves, which is thuggish, or which will get people categorized as being a thug. And this uploader essentially just kept confirming everything that she was repeatedly trying to deny, yelling about how you black men who say that black women want thugs, you're usually just unattractive yourselves, and you don't have the swag, and you're not covered. She even went so far as to say that you had to be covered in tattoos looking good. And I'm like, didn't you just see what you just did there? You just totally contradicted yourself. Or, as what I really intend to say was that this thing about attractiveness is all subjective, because everything that this uploader was going through, everything that she was repeating as being supposedly attractive and appealing and things of this sort, she was essentially saying that in her mind, her concept of an attractive man, or a masculine man, or a man with swagger or whatever, are the type of men who tend to fit the quote-unquote thug image. So in her mind, she's saying that if you dress this way, if you behave in this manner, or if you have an air that's similar to what we call the thugs, she considers that attractive. So what does that make the rest of you guys there who might have a little bit more of the pretty boyish look, or who might be someone who likes to dress in conservative type clothing, who fixes their hair, who tries to be clean shaven, who may have some softer edges, if you will? Well, she's got a category for you too. You're not a real man in her eyes. You're not masculine. You're too soft. You're too much of a pushover. You're not, you don't exude that kind of strength and that kind of what is this thing where you don't have that sort of assertiveness that should be quote unquote expected of a man. And in her mind, as according to her own admission, she finds that men like that are not deserving of female attention, and she actually finds them a major turnoff. And so much so that she explains that one of the problems that she has with black men who fall into that quote unquote non-thug category, or as she calls them, unattractive men, is the fact that they enjoy things such as cuddling, hugging, being caressed, being treated as equal human beings, as being not only respectable themselves but also expressing respect to their partners. These men she considers are unattractive and too soft and not really deserving of a black woman in their lives. And when she ran through that particular aspect of how black women and black men are supposed to interact, she just set off all sorts of alarms in my head, because not only a couple of weeks ago actually, when my mother met my fiance for the first time, she recognized that my fiance, as many of you are aware now, of course, that she is a black woman, for everything that I've been saying and screaming and hollering about how I was knocking on Heather's door and all this other mess. I was speaking less for myself as I was for the fact that this is the trend that's going to be followed until African American women learn to get their act together and learn to display a bit more affection, if you will. And this was exactly what my mother said when she saw that how my fiance was so radically different from what she even herself would say would be the typical black American woman. And according to my mother, at least according to her observations, she says that this is also true in the African diaspora, is the fact that there's something about black women where they tend to not show affection very well to their men. They're not very touchy-feely. They're not very considerate of their man's feelings. They don't do like typically what, and one of the reasons that my mother was actually trying to encourage me to go and get myself involved with a white girl over a black girl was simply because of the fact that white women, generally speaking, are affectionate. And it's an art that black women either have lost or have difficulty in expressing. And so to hear this uploader essentially outing herself, if you will, by saying that, you know, she doesn't want some soft man, she doesn't want any kind of man where she has to snuggle up against and coddle and, you know, pamper him and hug him and show affection to him. I was just like, well, there's your problem right there. It's not that so much that these so-called church boys, as she calls them, are soft and weak. It's just that they demand a little bit of positive reinforcement and positive feedback, and any man in any other society would demand equally. I mean, who in the world wants to have a partner living in their home, eating their food, driving their car, you know, these things, and not feel that they're getting a little something out of it other than just sex? I mean, sex is easy. Sex you can get anywhere. You can buy sex. But what about true, genuine affection? And it seems like black women have lost that art. And this uploader had basically, she just kind of like continued to confirm that this is part of the problem. And also another part of the problem, which is what I was really getting upset and aggravated about, was the simple fact that she kept going on and on about, you black men keep talking about how black women want thugs and black women really don't want thugs, and then she spins that off into, well, you black men are the reason for thugs. And again, as I stated numerous times before, yes, that is true. We are the reason and the fault behind that whole thug mentality, the whole thug movement, the whole thug attitude, the whole thug everything. Anything where it puts black men in a disrespectful light, you bet your darn last dollar that black men are responsible for that. So on that level, she's absolutely correct. However, as I've also stated repeatedly, time and again, that were it not for the fact that black women by and large are very receptive of this, or at the very least nonchalant about it, it keeps the cycle going. And it's not until black women wake up and realize that they do have the power to affect these positive changes which they claim that they want. See, nobody's necessarily saying don't like a masculine he-manish man. That's not what I'm talking about at all, and that's not what anybody's talking about. But if you want a man who's going to fit those qualities and fit those characteristics, and you're going to label something like that as quote-unquote attractive, then don't you at least want that without all the drama and all the baggage that typically comes along with that sort of presentation? The hardness, the rough edges, the disrespect, the lack of character. Excuse me, but I just think that it would be a much easier thing to find something that you like, that appeals to you, and demand that they fit into that same category, much like the black men who she also complained about going after the hood rats and the video vixens. She's absolutely right. Again, there's no argument there. But again, the same situation applies. who keeps the hood rats and the video vixens in constant supply. If it were not for the fact that black men find it acceptable and agreeable, not necessarily saying, hey, we like the attitude and everything, but if they say, hey, we like the look, but if we like the look so much that we won't demand, hey, keep the look, just drop the attitude. But see, as soon as we try to do that, then we get hit with all other kinds of excuses also as to why black men are wrong. So ultimately, when it really comes down to it, as much fault as black men have to take for keeping a lot of these cycles going, there needs to be a wake-up call and a dose of reality that really needs to be brought into this. The woman of any society has the power to dictate and to determine what her society is going to be. All that it takes is just for her to understand what her power truly is and to just let men know, look, we're not going to mess with you unless you've got at least a high school diploma. We're not going to mess with you if you got your pants sagging down off your ass. We're not going to mess with you if you don't speak like you've got a little bit of an education. We're not going to mess with you if you don't at least work part-time. We're not going to mess with you if you're going to run around talking ebonics and with your hair all dreaded out talking about, yeah, me, no, I'm shamed out. You know, as soon as black women decide, look, we want men who are going to fit a certain bill, well, first of all, they're already out there. For the very ones that you keep claiming that you want out there, they're out there, but they're the weak little church boys as they're being called nowadays. But you can still get that same sort of a positiveness from non-church boys. Just go to these guys who you think fit the bill, who have all the muscles, who have all the tattoos, who have all the swag and everything, and just tell them, change your attitude. You do that, then you won't ever have to worry about hearing the so-called church boys arguing and complaining about black women just like thugs. Because they'll see that, hey, black women just like tall men, or black women just like dark-skinned men, or black women just like guys with muscles and tattoos. See, you shift the argument when you eliminate all these other areas where it's like, look, the complaints keep coming as a result of not so much the black thug look, even though that's part of it, but it's the black thug attitude, which is the main problem. And we're getting tired of hearing black women constantly hopping from one foot to the other, talking about how much they hate how disrespectful black men are, and yet the very men that they keep flocking to are the very ones who stay stuck in this attitude of disrespect and everything, simply because they have a certain look to them. That's what, quote-unquote, you black men are complaining about. Has nothing to do with so much somebody looking like a thug or being perceived as more attractive. It's the whole paradox of you want the attitude to go along with the look. And in today's society, you can't have both. You have to pick and choose, one or the other. So if you want the attitude, go with the church boy that you're complaining is not attractive. Or if you want the He-Man, thuggish, hyper-masculine look, okay, fine, go for that too. But remember, in today's world, you're going to have to take the good with the bad. And that's all that I have to say on that. End of line.